or that I'll ever have to be embarrassed in that I misrepresented my people.
You know, sometimes the way life plays out feels like it's written straight out of a Hollywood script, full of glitter, glam, heartbreak, and the kind of shocking twist no one sees coming. And that's exactly what happened with Malcolm-Jamal Warner. This man once said these words with such calmness, with eyes that didn't flinch. He wanted to be remembered as an artist who lived fully, with no regrets and no stains on his legacy. Sounds poetic, right? Almost like a final declaration. But then, boom, the heartbreaking news shook the world. At just 54 years old, Warner's sudden death in Costa Rica spread like wildfire. And trust me, no one saw it coming. And suddenly, every camera, every curious eye, every whisper, it all turned to one place. Not Costa Rica, not the red carpets, but a villa in Studio City, Los Angeles. Yes, that quiet wooden door of his house suddenly became the stage for the biggest real-life drama. Behind those walls, secrets no one ever imagined. Because when the estate records started coming out, piece by piece, page after page, what looked like boring paperwork, wills, real estate contracts, and everyday belongings had everyone gasping. His fans, his colleagues, even his own family. No one was prepared for what he left behind. Let's just say it wasn't your typical Hollywood everything in order kind of story. It was bigger, it was stranger, and it left everyone asking, what had Malcolm been hiding all these years? Who was really going to inherit it all? And why did it all feel like a mystery wrapped in gold? Oh, buckle up, because you're about to get into a story that'll have you glued till the very end. And remember, don't just watch halfway, stay till the last second, because trust me, the secrets get wilder the deeper you go. Now let's rewind for a second, because to understand the shock of what Malcolm left behind, we need to talk about how his journey even started. Back in 1984, picture this, a 14-year-old boy, barely a teenager, walks onto a TV set, The Cosby Show. Yes, that Cosby Show, America's cultural giant of the 80s. And just like that, Malcolm transformed into Theo Huxtable, the charming, slightly mischievous son of America's perfect TV family. For 8 full seasons, running all the way from 1984 to 1992, this kid was in everybody's living room, 30 million people per episode week after week. Can you even imagine numbers like that today? He wasn't just playing a role, he became part of the childhood of an entire generation. And the recognition? Oh, it came fast. In 1986, just a year into his career, he got an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor. At 16 years old, that's unheard of. He was no longer just Malcolm-Jamal Warner, he was Theo Huxtable, etched into pop culture. But here's the twist Hollywood loves to throw. When you get stamped with one role that big, it sticks. For years after The Cosby Show ended, every producer, every fan, every casting agent, when they looked at Malcolm, all they saw was Theo, the lovable boy next door. And that shadow? It was suffocating. But here's where Malcolm proved he wasn't about to fade away as some washed-up child star. Nope. In 1996, he hit back with Malcolm and Eddie. This wasn't a small comeback. It ran for 4 years, more than 80 episodes, and gave him a chance to show the world that he could carry a show as an adult, as a man who was way more than his teenage past. It wasn't the pop culture hurricane that The Cosby Show had been, but it proved one thing. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was not a one-hit wonder. And he didn't stop there. He popped up in Community, Read Between the Lines, Suits, Dexter, even 911. Every time he showed up on screen, no matter how small the role, he reminded everyone. He had layers. He wasn't done. But acting, that wasn't enough. Warner wanted more. He wanted to control the camera, not just stand in front of it. So he stepped into directing, putting his fingerprints on TV episodes and proving he wasn't just a face. He was an artist with vision. And wait, if you thought that was all, think again. Because secretly, behind all the Hollywood glitz, Malcolm was nurturing another passion, music. Oh yes, he had his own jazz funk band performing in LA clubs. And in 2013, boom! He won a Grammy for Best Traditional R&B Performance with the song Jesus Children, honoring Stevie Wonder. Can you believe it? From TV teen star to Grammy winner. That's not luck. That's talent spilling over into every art form he touched. And as if that wasn't enough, Warner was also a poet. Imagine him on stage, blending jazz with spoken word, spitting truth about race, love, justice. People started calling him the poet of a new generation. Not just an actor, not just a musician, a storyteller in every sense. But what really made fans adore him was that, unlike so many Hollywood stars who drown in fame and scandal, Malcolm stayed grounded. No tabloid drama, no reckless spirals. Instead, he focused on family, on community, on being present where it mattered. In a 2020 interview, he literally said, "I don't need loud fame. What I want is to see Black kids grow up believing they can become whoever they want to be." That wasn't just talk. He lived it. He showed up at schools, community centers, youth programs, telling kids his story, inspiring them to dream bigger. And let me tell you, that kind of energy, it doesn't fade. By 2022, he was co-hosting a podcast called Not All Hood. It wasn't just entertainment, it was conversations about social issues, culture, the Black experience. And just like everything else he touched, it blew up with listeners. Now, on the outside, Warner looked like he had it all figured out. Balance, stardom without arrogance, art without the chaos. A celebrity who somehow stayed human. But then came his sudden death, and with it, the shocking discoveries about what he left behind. And trust me, the legacy wasn't just about money, it was about choices. Simple but shocking choices that turned his estate into one of the most talked about mysteries in Hollywood. And the first piece of that mystery, his $1 million home in Studio City. So here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Malcolm-Jamal Warner wasn't just an actor, a musician, a poet. He was also quietly, almost secretly, a smart investor. And the biggest proof of that? His home in Studio City. Picture this. It's 1994. Warner's only 24. Most young stars back then, they were burning their money on sports cars, wild parties, and expensive toys that lost value the second you drove them off the lot. But not Malcolm. No, this man went out and bought himself a villa in Studio City, Los Angeles. A 4-bedroom, 3.5-bath home with nearly 3,000 square feet of space. And back then, it cost him about $470,000. Not exactly peanuts, but compared to Hollywood's mansions, it was modest. And guess what? He wasn't just living in it. At one point, he was renting it out for $9,000 a month. Oh yes, Malcolm wasn't just an artist. He was savvy, smart with his money, clever with his assets. Now, Studio City wasn't his only spot. For years, he also spent time in Atlanta. Friends say he loved Atlanta's vibe, the warmth, the strong Black community, the thriving art scene. Some whispered that he even thought about settling there permanently with his wife and daughter. But official records show the Studio City villa remained the crown jewel of his holdings. And then there were his personal treasures. This part will give you chills. In his small home studio, dozens of instruments, guitars, basses, drums, many of them gifts from friends he'd performed with. They weren't just instruments, they were battle scars marked with scratches from his late-night jam sessions. Every dent, every mark told a story. And his books? Oh, those books. Shelves and shelves filled with volumes on history, art, and culture. But here's the catch. These weren't just decorative. They were heavily annotated, underlined, scribbled in. Malcolm wasn't just reading. He was questioning, thinking, leaving his mind on those pages. To friends who saw them, those books were priceless, like stepping into his head and hearing his private thoughts. But here's the kicker. While other Hollywood stars filled their lives with luxury cars, sprawling estates, and yachts, Malcolm lived simple. No sports cars, no show-off mansions, no yachts floating off Miami. His life? Quiet, grounded, focused on family, art, and purpose. And that's what made the discovery of his estate so jaw-dropping. Because when the numbers were added up, his entire estate, yes, including that $2 million villa, his instruments, his books, and a few small investments, was valued at around $4 to $5 million. Now you might be thinking, wait, that's a lot of money. But here's the shocker. For someone who spent over 3 decades in Hollywood, people expected way more. Tens of millions, maybe hundreds. But instead, a relatively modest figure. And that's when the truth hit everyone like a ton of bricks. Malcolm hadn't been chasing wealth. He hadn't been stacking millions. He was living simply, spending on his family, giving to his community, pouring himself into art. And that simplicity, that's what made his estate stand out. But of course, money isn't everything. The real heartbreak came when his loved ones started finding the small keepsakes he left behind. Handwritten letters to his wife and daughter, unpublished poetry manuscripts, experimental recordings for an album that was never released, private photos the public never saw. To the outside world, they were scraps. But to his family, these were treasures beyond any price tag. And here's where the gossip world really kicked into overdrive, because no one could find a public will, no official documents, nothing that clearly said, this is who gets what. So naturally, the rumors started swirling. Did he secretly leave something for the arts? Maybe a scholarship fund? Did he write a will but keep it only within the family? Or, and this one's the juiciest theory, did he record a digital will, something locked away in files that haven't been released yet? Every unanswered question just added to the mystery. Who was really supposed to inherit his estate? His wife and daughter, of course, seemed like the obvious choice, but what about his mother, Pamela Warner, who had always been such a huge part of his life and career? What about the Black community projects he always talked about? Did he leave anything for them? And that's the thing. Hollywood thrives on drama, but this wasn't movie drama. This was real-life suspense. The will, or lack of it, suddenly became the missing puzzle piece in Malcolm's story. And people everywhere wanted to know who was going to control not just his money, but his legacy. Because remember, this wasn't just about a house or some guitars. It was about royalties, TV, music, podcasts. His work would keep paying out for years. So who was in charge of all that now? And just when you think the story can't get more intense, it does. Because whispers from his past started resurfacing. Old loves, complicated relationships, family dynamics, all crashing back into the spotlight, raising even more questions about who really had a claim to Malcolm-Jamal Warner's legacy. And trust me, that's where things get really messy. It's where